Hey guys, thank you for joining us for this final draft show. Oh my God, I can't believe the draft's finally here. Thank God. We're going to be answering your fan submitted questions tonight and talking about the final run up to this year's 2023 NFL draft. But first, our guys at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You're joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, my first question is, did you just add that effect that made the graphic like shrink as the music's playing and like come into focus? Or
you just haven't been paying attention.
I just haven't been paying attention
last month or so. Yeah.
That's been happening for like a
here's
month.
a little insight. It is the saved like auto feature of whatever I use, iMovie or whatever. Okay. And I did it once by accident. Chris Kepner was like, "Hey, I like that." He even sent a message like, "That's a nice little feature." So I've just kept it for Chris.
A little inside baseball here. Like I'm always like getting ready to send out the tweet while that's going on, or like doing some final prep things, and I'm not like staring at the screen. And this time I'm just sitting there looking. I'm like, why is that?
That's different.
Oh, that's cool. I like. Good job. Yeah, nice work.
Hey, I'll take it. You can thank Chris.
So my other question for tonight, because tonight's show is about our final draft questions and about a lot of cool ones submitted from our Cover One OnePass members in the Slack channel and some on Twitter. My question for you is the draft here yet? Because good Lord, I'm done.
It is pretty much here. This is it.
Okay.
This is Draftsman's Eve, and we're here. You know what, though, Greg? This is a weird thing for me because, like you, I saw your thread last night, watching Draft Day. I'm a big Kevin Costner fan, huge fan of Draft Day. Went to the movies, took my wife, not wife then, out on a date. For that one, she was miserable. She hates the movie. She said it was not well done at all. But every year I watch it, I get so excited for the draft.
Oh yeah.
I didn't do it this year. I'm not super excited for the draft. I'm excited. I want the Bills to add talented players here. There's players I like in this draft, but compared to previous years of me covering Buffalo Bills drafts, the excitement has started to go. It's harder when you're picking at 27. It's harder when your roster is really good, and it's there's only a few paths for some of these guys to come in and start, right? Wide receiver, middle linebacker, maybe a defensive lineman type thing, but there's not a lot of paths, right tackle. And so that's hard for me to get super excited about this, but I'll get there tomorrow.
Yeah, I get exhausted because it's too much time in between with no new information. Like during the season, we get to overreact to new stuff. Like we live and die with every win and loss. Yeah. We overreact to every injury, but you have new information, so you can continually reevaluate your stance and, add new information and then decide, hey, does that change? Does that do different things? And when this goes on, like no actual new information comes out for a while here. And then everyone's given all their good takes. So content creators are now obligated to just throw crap against the wall and just come up with crazy off the wall takes that are nonsense. And then you have, I actually talked to this.
Are you talking about me right now? Or
I mean, not only you. So I was talking about this with one of our guys in the Slack channel that I'm a big believer in, like watching the betting markets and that like Vegas knows stuff before we do.
Yeah.
This is the one time of year where they don't, because every team is incented to leak false information. Everyone who has sources where they find out about injuries and changes in starting positions and like stuff behind the scenes we don't know about that move betting lines for the outcomes of games, they have that stuff locked down. Like they know that inside and out. At this time of year, some of those people are outright lying to them to falsely get the information out there. Yesterday, a freaking Reddit post moved the betting market on Will Levis, saying that this guy who swore that he knew Will Levis was telling his family that Carolina was picking him at 1. He came out today and was like, yeah, don't believe everything you saw on the internet. That's not real. It took those bets off the market because so many people bet on Will Levis going number 1. It wasn't true. Like, it just, my brain is done. Like, everyone takes such staunch, like, firm stances that I know this. No, we don't. There's nothing we're more wrong about than what we're about to see the next 3 days. We are insanely wrong. The best guy last year, all the experts do like the submitted mock drafts. The guy who won, the best expert in the entire NFL prognostication realm, got 10 out of 32 picks right in the first round. 10 players to the right team of where they're going. Like, yeah, some guys are better at the range and where they're going to be. I'm done. I'm all the way done. I'm ready for it to be here. It's frustrating.
Yeah, one thing, don't mess with Reddit, because if Reddit can change the stock market in Wall Street, then they can definitely alter betting lines.
I saw a really good one. Maybe were you the one that said Will Levis is
stonks? He's the new next GameStop.
Will Levis is GameStop. That was pretty good.
The other thing is that my exhaustion comes from, and here's the thing, Greg, we start later than we've ever started as Bills fans.
Yes,
right? Like, we're not starting, at least some
spoiled.
of us, some crazy probably start during the season, but I've always started when the season ends, and that's getting later and later, and we're still exhausted from this. And I made this point to Pat Moran. We've done 6 mocks, and I told him next year we got to probably pull that back. 6 is a little much. But my point to him was, when we started this process, there had been experts who already had all the game tape on all these dudes, and we're already going through and building big boards. And you had, for instance, some of our targets that have been in our mock drafts when I was doing with Pat, Bergeron, Mozzie Smith, some of these guys, and where they started and where they are today on all these mocks is substantially different. Mozzie Smith, when I first started looking at interior defensive lines, I was seeing 3rd, maybe even 4th round grades on him. And now there's conversations that, like, he might be the
75 guy.
Yeah, that he's a 2nd round guy. And there's people talking like he could creep up into that early 2nd, maybe at the end of the 1st. People don't know anything.
I'm gonna put a pin in that one. Wait until you see a tool that one of the people we've had on the show puts together. Is a really valuable reality check for some of those things.
Yeah, it just blows my mind, because, and you hear people early on, they'll be putting out mock drafts. No way so-and-so is going to be here at this. No way. And this is like in February. You don't know anything.
45 people that people have replied to me. There's no way they can be there at pick 27.
Correct.
There's like 100 people.
I'm no math genius here, but that feels like that wouldn't work out, man.
There's 100 people that people have told me, oh, there's no way they'll be there at 59. Like, it's just, we do it over and over again.
Yeah, and so it feels repetitive that we go through the same process every year, and the guys shift around boards and all this stuff comes out, and we overestimate the combine, and we overestimate what has happened at Senior Bowls and different things, and the NFL is wonky and things go crazy. But I will say, with all of our complaints and stuff like that, some of this is a fun process of getting to know some of these players. It does help to all these guys. Most of these guys are going to be in the league. A lot of these guys are going to go to teams that are rivals or teams that we're up against here. There's a lot of interest, I think, similar interest for players that we like, that teams that are competing directly with us that they're going to like. And so you get to know these players. So there is some valuable stuff to take away from these types of exercises and things like that. But I think it gets a little too crazy. People get drunk on their own ideas and their own concepts. And my biggest pet peeve might be, Greg, lists. People that just like blast out lists of like 15 guys. I like these like 15 guys at each position. And it's like, but then they're also the ones that are going to, after the draft, be like, I told you, I called it. I had this pick. That's the stuff that drives me the most nuts. Yeah.
You listed 90 players. I'd like to think you hit on a couple.
Yeah, you got them. Good job.
I'll add one last one before, and then we'll quit complaining.
This is like
my favorite.
This is great.
Yeah, I got some problems with you people. Yeah. You're going to hear about it. My second least favorite person is I was just watching his film. No, you weren't. No, you watched a highlight clip on Twitter, on YouTube.
Correct.
For 2 minutes, and then got bored and didn't even finish the highlight clip. Like the actual highlight clip was 4 minutes and 30 seconds. You made it through like 2.5 minutes and then quit.
Yeah,
you didn't grind the film. Like, just stop saying that.
No, that's a big pet peeve of mine all the time.
God.
Not just draft season.
Good Lord. All right. So what we're going to do tonight, we had some awesome responses. We're going to start with our awesome OnePass members in the premium Slack channel. So appreciate you guys very, very much. We're going to start with the questions that come in there. We'll work through them. We got a couple really good ones on Twitter as well that we're going to answer 4 or 5 of those as well. We're going to start with our man Stu. The team re-signed AJ Klein and have said they are good with the guys they have, Dotson, Bernard, and Spector. Do you think this is a smokescreen, or are you expecting them to address this in the draft? I know everyone is mocking a guy like Campbell. What's your take?
This one's a tough one for me because, again, this comes back to, I think that they would like to address it. It just really depends how this all shapes up and how that board really shapes up for them. Linebacker is a weird position to be in on for the draft this year. Brandon Beane sort of spoke to this in terms of how prospects line up based on what you play for defense, right? Not all of these linebackers are fits for being a middle linebacker in the Buffalo Bills defense. So you're really almost limited to like 2 to 3 prospects here. And only 2 of them probably belong in the conversation in these first 2 rounds, right? And so then it becomes a conversation about style and flavor. And is it a reach at 27? Can you trade back? I know my mentions are constantly, well, just trade back.
Have you thought about picking that same player and trading back to get
just
him?
Call another team and make them take the pick. Like, it's just really easy. Just give it to them. And it could work out that way. I do think, I was in Clubhouse with Eric and Thomas and AJ earlier, and we were talking, and I do believe that they are downplaying a little bit. To answer the question, I think they've downplayed a little bit how much they believe in the people in the building and the importance of linebacker in this defense. And I think those things probably lean towards, if it's within range, they're going to get it in striking distance.
You're spot on. I'll only add that if you go back to this exact time last year, people were telling us but look at how confident they were in Dane Jackson and how they were talking about the development in the room and how confident they were in our options at cornerback and that we're okay with the guys we have in-house. And then they traded up for a cornerback in the first round. So
that they didn't even play.
Correct. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. So, I will say it is in their best interest to put out what Stu is describing as a smokescreen, because they don't know how the board's going to fall. Maybe an awesome player falls to them at 27 that they have to take. And then 3 of the linebacker guys go before they can move up in the second round or before they pick at 59. And then all of a sudden they be like, oh crap, we told everybody the linebacker was a huge need and we had to solve it, and we didn't. It's in their best interest to tell everybody we love the roster. We don't think we have any big holes. We filled everything in free agency. We're going in wide open to take best player available, because then nobody can pin you into a corner because, well, you said that was the biggest need. Why didn't you address it? It's
perception in the locker room matters a little bit here too, right? Like, you don't want to go out and tell Terrell Bernard and Tyrell Dotson, who you just re-signed, that you don't believe in them at all. Right. That's not a good fit. You want to set that message out there. Hey, we believe in you. But if the opportunity becomes available where we're going to get a guy, we're going to do it. All right.
So here's the next one. Mike McKenzie gives us 2 scenarios. You got to pick which one you like.
Okay.
Would you rather trade up to 20 to get Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison, costing us our 3rd, or trade back to 35 to take Josh Downs and pick up an extra early 4th?
Trade down is the easy one for me. Pat, again, going back to Pat Moran and I doing those 6 mocks, dude, that he wanted so desperately for me to get into a trade up scenario. And there's just, he tried for hours to present me with one, and it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not good asset allocation for me.
If he had added Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20, like
20 is too far for me. I don't think, does the 3rd get it done to get to 20?
Just barely. Maybe 3rd and a 5th, 3rd and a future, something. So wherever the line is of you don't have to give up 59 and it's Jackson Smith-Njigba, or similarly like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is falling. Maybe that's Darnell Wright now.
I think for me, it's Darnell Wright.
Yeah. So if
I think he's like a top
super elite and it's not the 2nd round pick, there is a small window where I'd be happy. This one that he presented, I think Josh Downs is like in that same tier. I like Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison slightly more, not like materially more. I think he's in that same tier with those guys. And I think there are people who would make an argument they may prefer Downs over one or the other of those players. I would think I'd put him third out of those guys, but I have them like boom, 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 like next in order of they're like receiver 2, 3, and 4 for me.
Yeah, for sure. To the question, one, my thing is I don't want to. I want more top 100 picks.
Yes.
Not
Extra
fewer.
4th round pick sounds great.
Yes, that's what I would prefer. And then to the conversation you're kind of speaking about the rankings of wide receiver, this class is super hard for me. I think if you put this class into any other class, a lot of these guys are 2nd round talents. They really are. But in this class, they're 1st round talents. And I do think Addison, Flowers are 1st round grade guys. And I think that Downs is a 2nd round grade guy. But the argument I will make, maybe not so much for Flowers, but I think Downs might fit the need that we're seeing that the Bills have the most at receiver out of the slot. And I had somebody give me a little bit of a pushback on, like, you can't, I think it was Tilt Money had a scenario where they were drafting Downs or showing a scenario where Downs was 27th. He went through a full mock. He took Downs at 27th. And somebody was saying, you can't take a slot in the 1st round. And I think it's so obnoxious in 2023 to talk about slot wide receivers like they're somehow the 3rd best option on your team, when we know that teams are using the slot to attack defenses and to dictate to defenses. And we know in this offense, super important. So I think that's ridiculous that because a person is a slot primarily, that they somehow can't have production that's worthy of a 1st or 2nd round pick. And so I can see, to your point, that scenario where somebody can say, yes, these other wide receivers are higher talents. They probably have a higher ceiling, but Downs might be a better fit for what we're looking for.
Yeah. So Quentin Johnston would be a good example. I'm certain there are teams that have Quentin Johnston rated higher because they need an outside receiver and they need that kind of player. And there are also going to be teams that have Josh Downs rated higher. Like that, there are NFL teams who just straight up have Downs ranked higher on their board than him, or maybe than Addison even. I don't think that's crazy. I think Flowers is probably, I won't say universally, but probably most places have him higher than those guys.
Yeah,
but
I have him closer to JSN than I do to Addison, but I know a lot of people have those two clumped together.
Yeah. All right, next one from our guy Nick. He changed his name to Big Nickel in there, but Nick L, who is always a consistent supporter of us. In your heart of hearts, do you think there is a position group that's being widely discussed that the Bills will avoid in round 1? That some people are predicting, and that that they're actually not going to. I'll throw out a couple while you're thinking. Some like smart people. Cynthia Freeland had the Bills taking a corner. Joe Biscaglia had the Bills taking a safety. I will go on a limit to they're not taking the defensive back in the 1st round. Like I whatever, maybe like Devin Witherspoon or something falls at 27.
Is this gonna be your Boogie Basham moment where you thought, no way?
Wait, the next question. Wait for the next question. So they're not taking a defensive back in the 1st round. That one I feel comfortable with. I've seen some people mocking tight end. I don't think that's like, even like I like Michael Mayer and like guys who are really good talents. I think they have too many genuine needs. So I think some of those fringe ones that people have played with, but we've talked about it before. I have like 4, 5, 6 positions that won't shock me. But some of those, I'll go on a limb. They're not going to take a quarterback. But some of those that I've seen smart people project that I just don't really understand. Corner, safety, tight end. I don't see it.
Yeah, those are all ones that I don't see. In terms of the ones that people are talking about the most, I think it's been wide receiver, tackle, and now interior has gotten in there with linebacker. I don't think linebacker should be on the board round 1. So
that's not crazy. That's not
one
crazy.
that I don't think they're going to take, but I think there's a really good chance. I know they've visited with more wide receivers than any other position. I know that they're in on this DeAndre Hopkins potential trade. I don't think they're going to go wide receiver round 1. Maybe even if a guy's on the board there, I think that there's going to be some other talent. I don't know that. I think they have other positions of need that I would rank higher than wide receiver. I know a lot of people are in on the wide receiver no matter what train. If I don't pick one in mocks, I get killed for it. But I think that they are in a good spot with the room as is when healthy. And it is a position group that I think you could turn around real quickly year after year. If you don't get the guy that you want and the one that is the right fit, there's no need to just take one. I feel like people have gotten there where it's just whoever that wide receiver is that's going to be there at 27, just take that guy because we need wide receiver. And I just don't operate that way. And I don't think Bean does either.
So here, as I told you, or I kind of hinted at in the last one, Manuel is cruel. One of our guys from Germany. Actually appreciate him always being there on the Slack channel. Remember the 2021 draft? Which 2 positions could be targeted 2 times in the first 4 rounds?
2 positions.
So obviously, I'm
you have
not going
any?
to cheat. Yeah, I'm not going to cheat because you could and say like, oh, defensive line or offensive line.
I was going to say the line as a whole, yeah, but
so like obviously I could see a tackle and an end, or a guard and a tackle on offensive line. It's honestly kind of tough. It's honestly kind of tough. In theory, you could take 2 linebackers and it wouldn't, like, we could fit that.
Are there 2 good linebackers?
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth it. In theory, wide receiver, but then you're talking about adding a 7th premium asset at wide receiver in the top 4 round pick. So I cheating, I would say offensive line. You could do, I don't know if it would be 2 tackles, but you could take 2 guys. So I think you could do it where one of the guys is like Nick Saldivari, where he's listed as a tackle, but they're really taking him because they want to move him to guard. So they could do that where it's, hey, they got Darnell Wright in the first, and in the 4th, they take Nick Saldivari, and they're both listed at tackle. And it looks like we double dip, but really their intention is for Saldivari to play at guard. That would be the closest I could come up with.
Something like that. I'm trying to think. A Carl Brooks type of guy where maybe you take an interior.
But one's kind of a bendy, edgy one, and one's like a Carl Brooks guy who's really might even be a 3 tech.
Could slip in a little bit, yeah, but they're both listed as edge players, those kinds. But yeah, to your point, man, this is the overall point I've been trying to make the whole time, Greg, is this roster is really good. And if you double dip at positions, you're going to have a log jam at positions, because this is not the old Bills where every one of these picks has a path to the roster, right? You're going to have some log jams at positions here, especially if you double dip.
One last one here, and we'll Linda, who's been a super supporter of all of our shows, really appreciate her. She's on here with a lot of our Cover One shows. Lines up with a question from our man Ron, who's always in the chat here. I am legend in the Slack channel. You guys know him well. Asking, let's say they do make a trade for DeAndre Hopkins. What does that shift your draft board or draft needs to? And I'll ask first, does it remove wide receiver fully off your board?
Just about, right? Like there's a couple wide receiver. Again, another problem with this wide receiver class is it's a very much an undersized class where the talents have, like, I'm a big Tank Dell guy. I would still love to find a way to get him on this team, but my
legs in 5th grade were bigger than Tank Dell's legs.
Yeah, but he plays big. He really does. I'm not worried.
I actually like him. I like him a lot, but I'm curious. So I've joked about this in our Slack channel all the time. This NFL draft is going to be one of 2 things. It is either going to be a tipping point where NFL teams realize we need to recalibrate what we consider size anomalies, because what's being fed to us by high schools and college and guys who before just could not compete and hang as wide receivers. They just couldn't physically do it. Now they can. And that this is the draft class that's a tipping point that tells us, hey, we got to rethink what we think too small is. Or we are trying way too hard to shoehorn a ton of size anomalies, and this is going to be a very disappointing draft class. And I don't know if there's a lot of in between.
There might not be. The thing that took Tank Dell off and some of these smaller wide receivers is the Bills are kind of small outside of the top anyway. Adding in a Deontay Hardy really brought down the side. Like,
Sherfield's not a big dude.
He's not a big
Stephon
dude.
Diggs isn't that big of a guy.
No, they aren't. Gabe Davis has a good amount of size. Khalil Shakir is okay, fine.
Like
but
5'11",
yeah,
5'11",
if you have Hardy and Tank Dell, like that brings your average size way down. And so, but I think you could maybe add a guy like that late, a speed guy, some type of guy that you can maybe get on your practice squad, but nothing fancy. Maybe a Puka Nuka type thing or something like that.
Nakua, Alexi, Yoshivas. I'd take a shot on one of those days.
Shot on a guy late, sure.
Hey, here's an upside play that maybe can work out, but I don't know. I'm not going to invest a lot. And I do think it would pivot. You and I have had right tackle up there the whole time. Defensive tackle. linebacker, any of those other things. It would just make it easier to take one of those where you feel like you're not missing out because, oh, look, we already landed, DeAndre Hopkins. And we're not going to, we've talked ad nauseum about DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not going to relitigate that. I know there's tons of rumors. I know there's a lot of things out there. I know it's ratcheted up that it's in their best interest, specifically the Cardinals, to leak anything they can to be like, oh, we're getting offers from both the Chiefs and the Bills. One of you guys better stop. So that's smart business. The Chiefs do not want the Bills to get DeAndre Hopkins. The Bills do not want the Chiefs to get DeAndre Hopkins. If you can get one of them to panic and give up a little bit more than they were planning on, that's a win for them. I've said this entire time, Jeffrey, we really appreciate you very much, man. It means a lot. So we'll get to his question in just a second. That route, I think, makes a big difference. So, and I think this fits in for that question. Would an Addison Flowers pick be more about, more apt to get an extension done with Davis? And I'll even add in there, what if they trade for DeAndre Hopkins? What do you think a first-round pick or a trade for DeAndre Hopkins does for the likelihood of a Gabriel Davis extension?
I think an extension still goes down with a pick. I think an extension is probably off the table with Hopkins. I think the Hopkins plan isn't just a 1-year plan. If you're getting him, you're hoping that's a 2 to 3 year window that minimum you're going to have. Yeah, minimum 2. Maybe you can get him for an extra year or something. And I just don't think you can have those kind of resources tied up he'll change his deal, but he's still gonna get paid. He's still gonna have
he ain't giving money back.
He's not giving money away.
Flexible on the structure. He ain't giving money back. He ain't taking a pay cut.
No,
to do it. He'll be willing to move money around to help the team.
Correct.
But he's not giving money back.
Yeah, and as much as I love Gabe, wide receivers are replaceable, right? And so like you can probably get a cheaper rookie value the next year, right? Reset that. We got to draft one round 1 to next year. But when you draft one this year, you get that controlled cost. You're able to extend Gabe and get those contracts to sort of work up together. And I think that's a better path to bringing in a wide receiver, is having a guy that's been in your system. You can get that extension for Gabe Davis done. So that's how I think. What about you?
Awesome. So exact same. A first round pick. I will say a first round pick is maybe a slight notch of leverage for the Bills to be like, hey, no, we got Diggs, first round guy. I don't, a
couple million off the top.
I don't think it increases the likelihood, but I think if we make a premium pick first, second, third round, it does, like, either we were pretty close to getting an extension done or we weren't. Like, and I think that doesn't really change it. Maybe it's the impetus for Gabe to lock up that extension because he doesn't want somebody competing for snaps and targets during the year that could impact his money. Hopkins, it's too much money. It's too much money. I don't think you can give Hopkins, even in our best case scenario where Arizona eats $6 million, which I think is about the best we could possibly do, is matching that Brandon Cooks deal that Houston did. You're still talking about taking on 2 years and $27 million. Like, I just don't think you can give DeAndre Hopkins 2 years, 27, and he might want an extension for an extra year, and give Gabe Davis a market level deal that he's going to accept, short of him shocking us and signing for, I won't lie, I didn't think Jacoby Myers was going to sign for $11 million. So if we get some shocking team friendly deal, you never know, but I don't expect that.
Yeah.
All right, let's pivot to some of our friends here on the Twitter machine. While I'm doing that, everybody go press the like button. There's 127 of you watching live right now. Every single one of you should press the like button. Press it like boom,
right now. Do it.
Little boop. Next. All right, so we've got 4 questions queued up, and the last one's got a good example of a tool I want to share. Our first one from our guy Kaz. What brand of 40 would you recommend to drown my sorrows and or erase my memory a la Men in Black if the Bills don't draft Jack Campbell?
I've only had one brand of 40 ever. It's called 45, right? Is there other brands of 40s? I haven't had a 40 since I was like 18 years old. So.
Correct. I have not had a 40. I don't know if I've had a 40 while it's been legal for me to have a 40.
I don't think so. Mad Dog 2020 and 40s were my jam back at like 17, 18 years old.
2020, you monster. Yeah. Boone's Farm wine. You can do that too. I'm going to go with Mickey's. Mickey's is a good one with Colt 45. Okay. So I think, like, looking to erase your memory, I think Mickey's or Colt 45 would erase your memory. And I do like Jack Campbell, but it's not a guarantee, sadly.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, getting into a little bit more football this time, a little bit more. Our next one is coming from our guy Adam. Adam is asking, what is one pick you were so sure about that didn't pan out? And then additionally, if the world was perfect and the board fell exactly how you wanted it to, who are you taking with the Bills pick? I'll start out with the first one. I did share, like when we did that thread of famous bust from your team, how much I loved Sean Nelson and that he busted. But more recently, I'll add in Hakeem Butler. Like I was certain Hakeem Butler was going to be really, really good.
You really were. You
Oh my
really,
God.
really were.
And like he wasn't even like that was such a fast comeuppance that one he drops like the 5th round, I think. So like the NFL knew. The NFL was 100% sure he wasn't the guy. And then not only that, he was terrible. Like he was terrible. He hasn't even worked out like in the XFL. So like his testing and his size and the numbers he put up, I really liked it. That was bad. That was a bad pick. Bad pick.
I'm trying to think of one that I was so sure about that didn't pan out. Most of the guys I pick are really good.
I can't help it.
I'm barely
really
ever wrong.
I'm really good at this.
Josh Rosen.
Okay, there you go.
Josh Rosen.
That's good. That's good.
Probably for sure, right? Like I had him ranked. I think he was my first or second QB that year, and what was supposed to be the best draft class ever, and not good at all.
Yeah.
And then additionally, I'll go first here. If my board falls perfectly, it's starting out right, man. I feel like it pushes at the biggest need for protecting Josh Allen. I think you'd get your long-term starter done and solidified.
Just for, extra fun, I'll put Jackson Smith-Njigba there.
Yeah.
If somehow one of those two fell, that would be my absolute like perfect world scenario.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more before we get into the extra tool here. Our guy, a Buffalo guy who I know hosts his own podcast with his son and always having a good time there, asking about the last question: is Jackson Smith-Njigba a legit number one, or is he just the best wide receiver in this draft?
Like a legit number one receiver in the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I think so. First of all, I try really hard not to scout helmets.
Yeah.
But I also can't not do that with Ohio State wide
Brian
receivers.
Hartline doesn't miss. Like if he says a receiver is good and that he has come out both. So I'll add a little bit here. My question would be, do you think Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are number one receivers? Because Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Brian Hartline have all said Jackson Smith-Njigba is better than those two.
I have a tough time with friends talking about friends.
Sure.
Like there's a little bit of rose colored with that.
Sure.
But I think those are all good receivers. And I've been of the mindset of every year, like if you need a wide receiver, draft Ohio State wide receivers and just keep doing it until you land an elite one. Cause they're out there all the time.
For anybody who's not plugged into college football, wait till you see the one next year.
Oh my God. I know. And it's just going to keep going. I think I was seeing some recruits that they've been able to get. They're just going to continue.
If you're a receiver recruit, why wouldn't you go to Brian Hartline's factory of first round pick receivers?
It's so ridiculous. They've gotten quarterbacks like ridiculously overdrafted and paid because of how good their wide receivers are. Like I like Justin Fields, but he wasn't as good as a prospect, and he's so raw because they made him look so damn good. And obviously, rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins literally became a first round pick because of Terry McLaurin and Paris Campbell. And I think out of all the ones, I would be most confident that he can come to an NFL team and be the best wide receiver on their team.
Yeah. So our last one that we're going to go in here is going to lead me down a path to share something else I want to share. So our guy, Jim Wickens, who's in the Slack all the time and is a crazy draft fanatic, asking us to identify players that basically day three guys. So he specifically said players between 100 and 150 on the big board, which could make the roster at each of the draftable positions. He leaves out corner and quarterback and some of the other ones we're going to skip here. So I like the exercise. I think that's a good way to look at like, hey, who are some guys there? But my first question for Jim is, well, what big board? How do you decide? Because there's crazy variance between all the different things and all the different boards that are out there. So I'm going to share something that's one of my favorite things every year. Our guy, Arif Hasan, who we've had on for Vikings games, we've had on for other ones, covers the Vikings, used to be for The Athletic. Now he works for Pro Football Network. He does a consensus big board every year. what he does is he goes to the top. It started out at 20 and went to 30, and now it's almost like 70 different people of all the like legitimately rated draft experts, like people out there who are not just like me putting out a draft board, like guys who
For sure.
all the like legitimate draft boards that are out there, and he aggregates all of them. And what it does is gives you a little better sense of like, oh, I'm used to using the PFF mock draft machine, and I always see Broderick Martin as an available 6th round pick, or I always think, hey, if you don't jump up and get Jack Campbell by pick 38, you're not going to get him because he always goes 37, 38, 39, 40. It gives a little bit of a wake-up call that, oh, well, it's not always like that. And if you look around at some other legitimate experts, like if you go to from Daniel Jeremiah to Todd McShay to Field Yates to Danny Kelly to all the different draft experts that are out there, how can you go through and identify where those are coming from? And this was a good way for me to look through and to look at some of those positions that he shared that you go through. And again, Arif puts this together and kind of explains how each of the different things work. And, I've compiled the rankings of the more than 70 different boards around the industry. And it has been incredibly predictive that this has been more accurate, aggregating all of the experts than any one expert could be, which is logical. Like the
Data works better with more.
Correct. The data works better with more, the wisdom of the crowd, all those different cliches like that. That's logical that it would make sense. So I'm going to go through a couple and show you on a consensus level, who are the players that actually fall into that day 3 level. And then we'll pick out some of the players we like. So starting out at some of the bigger need positions, we'll look at, let's say, linebacker. So if we filter to linebacker and now go to the positions that are here, one, notice that on an aggregate level, Jack Campbell's player 50. So this idea that, oh, we might need to take him at 27, or that he's universally linebacker 1 on a whole from an aggregate level, he's actually a significant amount below Sanders and Trent Simpson. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, but this is looking at 70 experts draft boards. And if you look at who's there on day 3, after you knock out all these top guys here, it's a pretty big drop. So I'll say for me, I would go with Dorian Williams. He's a guy that I think is interesting. I like the idea of Ivan Pace Jr., but for me, I would pick a guy. I would be interested at adding Dorian Williams to our competition of what's there. I wouldn't expect him to come in and start, but I think it's possible. That was Jim's question. Who's a guy who you think actually could come in and earn a job? I think he's the kind of guy that I guess I wouldn't be shocked if he earned a spot.
I'm going to cop out on this and say no one. If you don't go, if you don't go early, my problem is you have some youth that you drafted at the linebacker position that's already in your building on a rookie controlled cost. And I don't know that drafting a guy in the hundreds is an improvement over a Terrell Bernard he drafted in the 3rd round a year ago. And so if you're not going to have an improvement, I don't know that there's need for just more for the sake of more prospects. I guess it's another lottery ticket that a guy's gonna pan out, but it doesn't feel like a great utilization of the assets. It's just kind of like bunch another guy in there because you don't have a linebacker.
So I'm going to show 2 different ones here because he splits out 3 techs and 1 techs. Your guy Mozzie is a good, recollection that, hey, maybe he's sneaking into the late 1st, but most people still have him in the second half of the 2nd round at pick 46. Here, I have a rough idea who your pick would be as your guy. You've been a supporter of Jacqueline Roy the entire time. And if you look at 1 text, it shows you even more that combined, even if you mix these 2 groups together, it's not necessarily the deepest group from a draft position standpoint, because you draft Keanu Benton, Siaki Ika, and then it drops fast.
Dude, I'm so much higher on Broderick Martin than the whole world. I feel like there's a few guys in the Slack channel and stuff like that. People that like, but every mock that I've taken him in, I get an F no matter where I take him. Like the world just does not like him. I think those big, he's very much like big space eating nose tackle type guy. And I just
probably
don't
not
think
a ton of upside per se.
But if you don't draft a linebacker and you got to keep some small linebackers clean.
So here's another one looking at wide receiver. So again, Smith-Njigba up there at 12, not very likely. How about the fact that Quentin Johnston was the consensus here?
I don't
Wait,
see it,
sorry.
but
Producer Chris is bringing up. I think we skipped over a super chat from one of the guys while we were going here. If you
Gotcha.
were a betting man, odds on favorite, what is our chances of getting DeAndre Hopkins, and how do we even afford him? Well, one, I've talked about it a lot of times. It's not that hard to afford him. We take on the contract. I'm assuming that they're going to eat a little bit of money, but even if they don't need that much, you prorate the money over the coming 4 years with void years. We would take him on, and he would add about $4 million in cap hit in 2023, and we would spread about $2.6 million into each of the subsequent 4 years. Adding $2.6 million just isn't the end of the world. It's not that hard to afford him. It would be very easy to fit him in. From an odds standpoint, I do think he's going to get traded. I do think the Bills are probably the most likely of those teams, but there are 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 teams. So I'm going to put it at the Bills are 30%, the Chiefs are 25%, and then everybody else is like 10% each for the other teams. But it's probably the Bills or the Chiefs, and I'll put them at 30% likelihood.
Oh, I was thinking like 40, 45% for the Bills, and maybe, I think it's Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, maybe sneaky a little bit. I'm hearing some rumblings about that, but I do think it's Bills, Chiefs are the top. He wants to go play for a competitor. He's going to make that deal easier. He's got to work with the team that's going to be taking him on for that contract.
He doesn't need to help Daniel Jones be his
quarterback. Correct. And so, if he's going to work with a team to get that deal to be a little bit sweeter, it's going to be probably a competitive team. But I think the Bills are slightly in the lead, at least from the rumblings we hear. But I don't know that it's substantial.
Yeah, correct. It's not going to be. MP asking, does that include Oliver's money going out? No, it doesn't have to. It would make it easier, but we could add that right now. We would be able to add that right now if we actually get. So what they would do is they would do the draft class. They would add in DHop. And then we couldn't do any extra moves during the season. You would just be at a spot where, hey, if you want to do anything else, you have to restructure Trey White, Deion Dawkins, players like that, which you could do. You would just restructure those players and create space if you needed to. Each of them is like 4.5 or 5 million, so we could free up another 10 million between the two of them if we need to. So that's out there, and then they have a chance. Appreciate you, DF. That means a lot. But looking at that, along with that likelihood, some interesting pieces. Quentin Johnston is the consensus number 2 on the big boards that are out there. I think that's not necessarily. I think most people think it's Zay Flowers. There's a lot of people who still have Zay Flowers there, and I know Linda was talking about the weird thing that like some rookie receivers are flying in for workouts with Patrick Mahomes, and they don't count as top 30 visits. And I don't know. It seems weird. They probably should forfeit the draft pick. Jalen Hyatt rated ahead of Josh Downs. I think I'd prefer Josh Downs. But let's go to that day 3 group. Tank Dell down here with Jaden Reed. I actually think this little window here at 77, 80, 82, 88 is a really nice little window.
I love that
Marvin
Mingo
Mims,
is a little
Jonathan Mingo, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed. One of those 4 falling to 91 would make me super happy.
I like Mingo getting a little bit of love here. He seems to be lower on a lot of the boards that I do actual mock drafts on. Correct.
So here, him being right there with those other players again shows a little bit more insight. A guy like Tyler Scott, I don't hear his name that much, and he's way up higher on the consensus board
for real.
I
do like
day
Michael
3
Wilson
pick here, I would lean into. I like Yoshivas. I think that's an intriguing one, but I'd probably say Michael Wilson. He stuck out from the day 3 guys here. He'd be my bet.
I was gonna say you got a live look at him at the Senior Bowl, and he had a pretty nice week there. And Jim Nagy put out a reel this morning of a bunch of different stuff from him, saying like this is kind of criminal that he's so far down low on all these boards and stuff like that. Like this guy's a legitimate player, so that would probably be the top one. I'm also another guy. Again, this might be my own fan bias coming in the way. I really like Ronnie Bell, and I don't know how he's just buried at the end of this draft. Like, I get that he had an injury. I don't think he fully recovered from that injury, and I think a team that's smart enough to understand that will get a really good playmaker late in this draft.
So here again, this board separates offensive tackle, offensive guard, and center. So I'm going to kind of skim through some of those quickly here. But again, Darnell Wright at 22. I think that those 4 are going to go higher than that. It's DeJuan Jones fall a little bit lower than what people think, 43. Bergeron, 59. That's really awful nice little number sitting there. players at 100, I like the top two guys. I won't lie. Wanya Morris and Nick Saldivari, I think, are both good picks. And I put it in our Cover One Slack earlier. If you do nothing else of any draft prep and just go to, oh, hey, who are the guys that Brandon Thorne describes as my guys in the draft class? That's a pretty good starting point. Here's two of them. Nick Saldivari from Old Dominion and Carter Warren from Pitt. If Brandon Thorne tells me those are his guys, good by me.
They're good by me, yeah, for sure. I will say this. I'm fine with adding tackle late if you miss early on, but my intention is to push Spencer Brown, and I don't know that you can do that late.
I agree. I don't think. I think that Carter Warren is a developmental tackle. I think Saldivar is a guard. Honestly, I think he's a guy who would come in and be a long-term fit at guard. Same idea. If I flip this to guard, I don't think it actually shows how thin this group is. Look at the drop off from Osiris Torrance to way down that list.
Much.
Some of the names are there.
That's probably why you saw the Bills address guard so aggressively in free agent.
They're a little maybe picky here. They list some guys at center that I kind of think are probably guards.
It is a little weird. And here's the thing we have to understand is teams view this differently than the boards will, where they're going to have guys that they believe are firmly a center that they can move around and do some things. So we don't know where these guys are all going to totally end up. So it's weird how some of them get placed at this point.
Yeah. Sorry.
Cody Mock's one of those guys, and at different big boards, he's all over the place.
Yeah. Depending on how you list him or what he's going to be.
What'd you do?
I don't know. It's not letting me filter, and I think I broke it.
Do we have to pay for it now?
You break it, you buy it.
Yeah.
So either way, I just think it's a good exercise to be able to go in and see where some of those different boards show.
Tight end is one we didn't get to, and I will say my absolute favorite move in mock drafts is either Shoemaker or Kuntz late. And getting 100%. One of those guys. And I do think that that is the most realistic. Where is a pick 100's path to starting on this roster? And not starting over Dawson Knox, but could
beat out Quentin Morris.
Could beat out Quentin Morris and have a legitimate role in a 12 personnel.
Yeah, 30, 45 snaps. It absolutely could be taking place. I'm going to laugh. Arif's probably like updating the page while I'm
in the middle of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did lose it. Oh, wait, it might be back. If I can bring up tight end, I'll show that one. So I agree. Oh, I can. I'm going to bring it back up. So I do think that's another interesting one. I think you're spot on. I think that's a guy that, again, that what do you call that, starting or not, but it's still 30-40% of snaps. So, here, I think, Washington in that area, I think Laporta down there towards 59 is not out of the question, depending on how things fall, or if we make a trade for Hopkins or whatever else might happen. Schoonmaker at 99 on the consensus is interesting that, he's a guy that I think could make sense there. And then I love this group here because I would actually add in both Brenton Strange and Payne Durham. I think are guys who could come in here and push Quentin Morris for a spot there. But I agree completely that I won't be mad if Schoonmaker is a pick at 91, but I'd love it at 130. And the same thing, Kuntz, I think the athletic upside you're betting on, he's the exact kind of guy you want on day 3, where there's a chance he might never work out, but if he hits, he might hit big and might have a chance to really
that's where you take those risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other positions that you think?
What was the other ones? I think those all the draftable starting.
Yeah. Well, the one other I do want to show is safety here, because safety is one that, although I'm not interested up here, I actually don't have any interest there. Maybe Jortavius Martin in 91. I won't be mad. But I don't want a safety anywhere there. But what I do want to show is when I went down here to look at, who's in the hundreds? I was like, it's Chris Smith and Brandon Joseph and Marte Mapu and Ronnie Hickman and Kayvon Merriweather and Brandon Hill. And I actually am totally good with a bunch of the day 3 safeties. And I don't care which one. Like, hey, pick one of the day 3 safeties because I think it's fun there.
I crush on Brandon Hill. Yeah. Probably way too much. I was not, when people started before the Poyer contract came down and we got Poyer back and people were in on Christopher Smith, I did not love that idea, or like people were talking earlier, and he's sort of fallen on the board a little bit. I don't know that he has the athleticism I'm looking for, but some of these guys for sure take a waiver wire on in a day 3 pick, because at the very least, you have to fill the special teams a little bit here too. They might not have a path to safety right away. We're hearing DeMar Hamlin's going to try to make a full recovery. Yeah. We don't know how that's going to go. There might still be a need for developmental safety in this room, but it's a bit of a logjam. So if one of these guys comes in, they got to be a special teams contributor right away. And I have not watched enough of them to say who would be the best fit for that. But I love Pitt safeties in this defense. It's just a natural fit. You know that safeties, one, they ask a lot of the safeties. Two, there's going to be a transition coming from college to the pros. So if you can alleviate some of that by having a defense that plays similar to exactly what your scheme is, that's why guys like Dane Jackson, while not a high-end athlete, can come in early on in their career and seamlessly fit into this zone defense because they've done the same type of concepts in college. So I like taking late round guys that play in similar style defenses at the collegiate level.
So talk about a similar style guy to keep an eye on. Marte Mapu is a guy who a lot of people think is going to be a linebacker in the NFL. And depending on what the Bills have in mind with, the signing of Taylor Rapp, this could be an interesting developmental piece there that could be a nice kind of training spot. Sacramento State, there's a lot of Saran Neal vibes around Marte Mapu. He checks a lot of those boxes of small school guy who's kind of a tweener, safety, corner, linebacker, big, strong athlete, will be a perfect fit on special teams from day one. So Marte Mapu is a name to think about, especially if they have some things in mind for that Taylor Rapp role.
Yeah.
All right, man, we made it. We've done it. We somehow have survived from free agency through the draft. And I know you had said earlier you haven't been quite as excited. I actually am. I love so all the complaining I do, and I complain a lot about how much I hate the last couple weeks here leading up to it. I love the draft. I can't wait. I'm going to soak up every single second of it. I can't wait to watch all of it the next couple nights. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's something that I'm really, really excited about. And, I can't wait for the real thing to get here and to see who we can welcome. And you and I are always very transparent about this. We're not draft experts, but we are good football analysts. And I'm excited once I do find out who the Bills pick to dive head first into everything I can learn about that player and come tell people from the draft experts that are there. And then from the film we will watch on those drafted players, how much is out there to be able to make that work and to go through how they're going to fit and help the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I'll get excited for the draft. I'm going to be excited to watch it all. For me, it's really the kickoff of the league year, even though the league year kicked off before and there was free agency stuff. It's the first event, right? The NFL is back. They put on a big show. That's always fun. But to your point, it's all about who the Bills get. That's really all I care about. That's the excitement, where it lives. I'm hoping it ends this week with a DeAndre Hopkins to the Bills. That would get it much more exciting for me, and be something that's really fun to break down the content going forward for that. But we're going to get some guys that are fun. We're going to get some guys that we fall in love with that are going to help this team. And so for that reason, it's exciting. This Bills team is in a really good spot. They're only going to get better after this weekend. And that's the best place to be. Where in years past, we were more
those guys to come save us.
We were more excited for the draft because we needed that turnaround. We had to get somebody in here to turn the way things were going around. Realistically, I know people are really pissed off at the way that Brandon Beane has not, in their view, successfully drafted over the last couple of years, but this is a really good team. They can afford to have a few years where it doesn't work out as well as it does for some other teams. They do got to probably hit in this draft, especially for if they want to have the continued sustained success that they've talked about. But there's not a lot of pressure, in my opinion, for the Buffalo Bills to really just hit it out of the park. So I'm excited for it. I know they're going to add some talent to an already good team, and I'm excited to break that down. But yeah, it's just not, and in years past, it's been so much more excitement that it's hard to get up to the levels that I was. You're muted. You did it. Drink.
Made it so far. So another quick shout out to all the guys, all the work wherever going. We're going to have live draft coverage every single night and some instant analysis coming out right afterwards. So we're going to have live coverage with you. And then starting at midnight each night, we're going to have some quick recap shows on who the pick was and how it benefits the Bills. So lots of stuff for you every single night, all the rest of the week. And a quick shout out to our guy, Glenn Goodberry. shot me. He designs these hats, the Buffalo on the Brain hats, with his brother who started, Bengals on the Brain that he's designed for Cincinnati fans. Shot me one of these awesome ones, and I think dangled a carrot that if you go eat chicken wings with him, he'll give you one of these as well. So
yeah, so he told me I have to go to him to get it because we're local. I live right up the road from him, and so it just makes sense.
Send me that, and he even included like this cool koozie that has Buffalo on the Brain on it, and it has like the actual code that if I click that with my phone, my phone will play the shout song.
Smart.
That's awesome.
I love Glad, man. He's a great follow. If you're not following him, super fun follow.
Best shoe collection on the internet
by far. And always posting great pictures of pizza and wings. Dude,
he eats good food and wears good clothes. Like that's his life.
And he's like my size. I don't get it. It's weird. I gotta ask him about it. I gotta figure it out because I know my guy Pat Moran. I know he struggles. He wants to eat like
Pat versus food. Pat versus food is the best battle on the internet.
Yeah. So no, that's good. I can't wait to get that hat. That's a cool one. I need a new Bills hat anyway.
And Spin asking here. Yes, we did. We were invited to go out to KC this year. We had some of our friends that we talked with. Kent Swanson, the guys over at KC Sports Network, were awesome. They invited us to go out there and to be able to do some work and things like that, but it just didn't work out travel wise. We weren't going to go there. We could have had the credentials to do that. I will say next year when it's in Detroit and I just have to drive around the lake, there's a real good chance
I can cut through Canada and get to Detroit in like 3.5 hours.
So there's a real good chance we might be back on this year, but I did not make the flight to KC. I'm going to enjoy that.
Yes. I will say, and this might get me some trouble on the internet, but like I never actually want to go to Kansas City, Missouri. Not once do I want it. I don't care.
At no point has that ever crossed your mind.
I'd rather go to Detroit.
I want to go. Detroit style pizza is actually fantastic.
Yeah, it is really good.
All right, guys. The chat's been awesome tonight. You guys made it. We finally come to it. And Jared, this is going to be hysterical. If we trade down, we might have to wait another 24 hours. Honestly, I'll be so excited about like the trade and the assets coming in that I'll be good. And I'll know that
I'll be a little annoyed in the moment.
Yeah, I'll be a little annoyed at like 11:30 p.m. when I find out and I stayed up the whole time and then found out we don't get a pick. But I'll be happy.
The next day will be very exciting.
Correct.
And when that happens, I predicted it last week on Spaces that this was going to happen because we do Spaces every Friday morning and we're like, man, we'll either be sitting here talking about who they picked or talking about who they're going to pick.
That's right. So. That's right. All right, guys. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Thank you to awesome producer Chris Kepner. All the fans, you guys are fantastic. Again, please press that like button. It really helps us out. Press like on the way out. It means a lot to us. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and